Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ask a Scientist Gaming, where we combine mediocre gameplay with expert science. We're coming to you live from the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory. It's an open house event, and they invited us to come here and stream live from the MagLab. And so, magnet-related questions, you are in the right place. I'm Ken Hansen, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Florida State University. I do photochemistry and photophysics, meaning I do light-driven processes, shine light on molecules, do reactions, do transformations, run photocurrent, all sorts of things. But more importantly, joining me today is Dr. Faith Scott. Faith, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Faith Scott. I'm a postdoc at the MagLab, and I do something called nuclear magnetic resonance. So you probably know something about MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging.
Yeah, it's a little loud. I'm going to take care of that.
So with the MRI, you're looking at a whole body, and you can tell what the body looks like because of the magnetic resonance. I'm looking at nuclei inside a molecule, so the sample can be much smaller. Sometimes the signal on that is pretty small, so I also do something called dynamic nuclear polarization, where we use microwaves and really low temperatures and electron radicals that are added to the sample in order to increase the signal and the polarization.
All right. Equally important, what game are we starting with?
So we are playing Kingdom Hearts, which you'll just see what it is.
All right. Pause and we'll frame for the YouTube clip.
Great.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So
We'll let you settle in a bit before bombarding you with questions.
Let's get to I started with a load. Oh, excuse you.
So Kingdom Hearts, when did this come out?
Oh, don't ask me.
My first one had to be 2010. When was it?
Yeah, so I'm playing the first one. I got past some of the tutorial stuff so that I could show you some of the more fun gameplay.
First release March 28th, 2002.
Yeah.
So this was out for the original PlayStation, is that?
Yeah, and this is an updated one for PS4.
The remastered version.
So
it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right, I missed a couple. Polazoid, thank you for the subscription to Amazon Prime. We appreciate your support. It helps our channel. TSA Burrow, thank you for the follow. Again, thank you for joining us. If you have questions, throw them in chat. We're happy to answer them. The guest today is Dr. Faith Scott. She's an expert in nuclear magnetic resonance, which is basically looking at nuclei with microwaves and big magnetic fields. So she's happy to answer any questions you might have on things like NMR, MRI, microwaves. She is happy to answer any of those questions. So I haven't played Kingdom Hearts. I'm relatively familiar with the game.
Yeah.
But for the audience.
So just a basic idea. You're a kid with a giant key and you hit things with the giant key. Those things are usually darkness related, so we're the good guys. And you have Disney characters in it, so you're usually joined by Donald and Goofy. And they help you fight, and you're usually going to different Disney worlds. So we're going to the world of Hercules right now. So there's like a Coliseum, and we get to kind of do fighting brawl kind of tournament stuff in that area. So
it's fun. It's a journey. And this one's near and dear to your heart. You still play this regularly?
Oh yeah. So obviously, this wasn't around when I was a kid, but I started playing this one with my now husband when we started dating, and so it's still really, sentimental to me. Mm-hmm. And also, it's one that I feel like I can talk through, whereas a lot of the stuff that I play by myself, I'm not sure that I could open up and talk while I was doing it. So
no, it's fun. We have the extremes. Some people can talk but not play games, and then others will play the game but not talk.
Yeah, well, it feels like it's one way or the other.
Yeah, there's rarely a middle ground, but
yeah,
I think it's a good choice. It's a fun visual game.
So
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's got some fun flashy colors.
Yeah. All right, so I'll start with our classic question.
Okay.
It's a question of path that got you here today. Obviously, 5-year-old you was not like, I'm going to be a postdoc at the MagLab.
Oh, no.
Like, you were going to be a firefighter and then change. Like, what was your progression? How did
Okay.
you get to where you are now?
5-year-old me wanted to be a blacksmith. I went to like those historical things and
Yeah,
wanted to
Renaissance
be
fairs.
a blacksmith because they got to work with fire and metal all day, and that was really cool. So then when I was a little bit older, I wanted to be like a pyrotechnician for like fireworks and stuff because, again, really cool, lots of colors. Realized that there wasn't as many people doing those kinds of things, but those both were kind of chemistry related, so I got interested in that. So then my college got a little broader, so I just had a chemistry degree. And then with grad school, you start to get more specific again. So I got a physical chemistry degree and ended up in a lab where we were doing dynamic nuclear polarization. And ended up that he needed a lot of help building things. We were building a lot of instruments for the lab. So I started doing that. By the end of the degree, it seemed more like maybe a engineering degree, but I ended up with a lot of those skills, and that's what I do now. I build probes and also use them to look at user samples, and we get user samples from all over the world, so it's a lot of fun.
I mean, so why chemistry? What was the moment that made that transition?
I don't know. I think it just has the most to do with fire.
That seemed like
But I mean,
Bunsen burners are cool.
Like, physics, you're looking at a lot of like little balls hitting each other and doing stuff. But a lot of the balls that are hitting each other and doing stuff and then changing are chemistry. So not to diss physics too much, but it's kind of, I enjoyed that as kind of at the middle of everything, as physics is too. But yeah, it kind of had some more stuff into biology as well.
That's pretty fun. I actually have a fun factoid for you. So your graduate advisor, Alexander Barnes.
Yes.
So I've known Xander for about 20 years. So,
oh, that's so cool.
So he and I did the 2003 RU program in solid state chemistry together. So we were actually roommates when we visited Clemson University, and we went out to our respective universities. And
so that is so great.
We've kept in touch for the last 2 decades, actually. So when he came out to FSU to visit and give a talk, like, he stopped by my house and we hung out and stuff.
Oh, that is so great.
Now he's in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, he's in Switzerland now.
Yeah, so I'll have to visit him at some point. But.
Yeah, I that's still on my to-do list to visit and see see his lab in Switzerland. But yeah, it's
small world, right?
It's a small world, right?
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. So.
What's insane about
that's great.
Like, we had 8 students at that REU, and 2 of us became professors at R1s, which is statistically impossible.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cool that we got to stay in touch for that period of time. So you were one of his first grad students then?
Yes, I actually was his first grad student to graduate.
Okay.
So yeah, it was it's really fun.
So you helped him build a lot of DNP stuff, right?
Yeah. So
nuclear polarization.
Yeah, so I started with a waveguide, which just transports the microwaves around, and then built up to making a gyrotron, which is like a high-power microwave device. And we built ones that could do frequency sweeping that no one else in the world could do, and that allowed him to do different kinds of experiments with electron decoupling. So, so how that led to here was they had built a lot of probes in the past here, but they had never built probes for DNP. So they needed to know how to implement waveguide to get microwaves to the electron radicals, and they also needed to know how to implement cryogenics and insulation. So I was hired on to kind of help with that process and design those parts of the probe. So that's how I kind of contributed to things.
Yeah, that's I mean, you had a unique graduate experience. So for
Yeah.
those of you not familiar, when we go for academic jobs, when we want to become professors at universities, we typically go through a job interview process where we say, here's the research I want to propose to do. And the university decides to hire us, and we get something called a startup package, which is basically a bunch of money to start your research, and that'll vary depending on what you're going to do. But you essentially have to build a lab from scratch. This is build the measurement techniques, this is set up all the glassware, and like, you don't do that alone. You have grad students like Faith that join your group, and you say, here's what we want to do, help me build this lab from scratch. And like, I'm far enough along in my career, I'm 10 years in, my new students don't build the lab anymore, they're just using what was built by prior students. And so it's a rare experience, but an awesome one, because you worked very closely with Xander, right? I mean, presumably you're building everything together.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started, he was still at his lab in Stanford as a postdoc. So we would meet on Skype and talk about like the waveguide stuff that I needed to put together this week.
Yeah.
And then, we would end up, we in the lab together and building different components. And sometimes it was slow, but it still built a lot of good experience that I really enjoyed. So
we have a comment from the audience. Say, fellas, did somebody mention Door to Darkness? Is that
Door
a
to
Kingdom Hearts
Darkness,
relevant thing?
That is a relevant thing for... There's so much deep lore in this game, and I really don't want to get too far into it.
Yeah.
Just enjoy it as some Disney characters
Fighting.
and a kid, and just have a good time.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's a fun game, and it's a lot of mini challenges, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of mini challenges, and I mean, it's like a role play game, so like you can put like 60 hours into this pretty easily too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're a postdoc at the MagLab. I mean, this MagLab, it's a unique environment. This is a national lab. It's federally funded. It does a very unique type of research, high magnetic field related things. I mean, what's you went from academia, you were at Washington, St. Louis to here. What's your thoughts on, this national lab setting versus an academic setting?
Oh, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So the thing with most labs is you're focusing on a specific system, like with and it can be a really cool model system, like with our lab in WashU, we were dealing with proteins that were relevant to HIV, and so it was really cool, and I really felt motivated by it. But what we do here, it's a user program, so we have a different user every week, and I run samples for them, so it can be whatever kind of program or whatever kind of things you want. Like, I've run grass, dirt, and ash. I've also, I'm going to run Catalyst next week. That was fun because I got to pack a rotor in a glove box for the first time. That was really challenging.
It's like working in space.
But I'm just getting to interact with a lot of different, a lot of samples, and by proxy influence a lot of different labs, and kind of the stuff that I'm building is being used by a lot of different people, which I really enjoy. That feels really good for me.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. That's fun. And then you get a lot of coworkers here. Highly collaborative environment.
Oh, great. The person who was on earlier, Thierry, I work with him a lot. We're actually doing a project on dielectric properties together. And also, there's like other stuff. He does EPR, NMR kind of stuff, and DNP is kind of the combination of that. And he also does Overhauser DNP, which you might have talked about a little bit. But so we talk a lot, and for all kinds of different experts, there's usually someone in the building that I can talk to about it, which is fantastic.
No, that's nice. I mean, it contrasts a lot with like graduate school, because you have maybe your group members, but beyond that, the expertise is limited on your area.
Yeah, it's pretty. So it's a really fun time.
Now, so your graduate work, you were solving protein structures for HIV-related things?
Yeah, I mean, I personally never got to the point where I was doing like protein structure stuff because the equipment wasn't at that point when I was there. But some of my colleagues were able to do that, and they actually were able to test some of the drugs that we were working on blood that was taken from HIV positive patients.
Wow.
So that was a really cool end to the project there, and it was able to just kind of work for us really well. So yeah, it was just really cool to see that collaboration. Even on an academic campus, obviously you can have a lot of different collaboration. So, yeah, that was actually a different lab with the medical campus that we were working with that.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, we talked a lot about collaboration with Terry, and like this is the environment to do that. That's definitely true. It's really fun. All right. Man, where do I want to go with questions? I don't want to be too redundant to what Terry was saying. Because your expertise is very similar, but not... I mean, I think your life experiences are very different. That's one of the things I like about having guests on, because you're at a different stage in your career. You're in a different place than he is. Your journey to get here is very different. So,
I mean, have you had any postdocs on before, or am I the first one?
I had one of my grad students after he graduated and got his PhD. I let him stream on. So he's at Savannah River National Lab right now. So he was one of my 30th guest or something like that.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah. I've still limited it to PhDs though. I'm not going to have grad students on yet. Mostly. Okay. Yeah. Like one of my philosophies with this stream is to like knock down the ivory tower, and I don't think students do that as well as actual PhDs, because it's like.
Yeah, I mean, you also kind of have to know how to communicate, and that's something that you're supposed to be taught while you're a grad student by teaching and TA positions and stuff like that, but sometimes it's still pretty fun.
I mean, taught is a very generous way to describe that, because no one actually teaches us to communicate. You just kind of like pick it up over time.
Like, oh, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's expected that you know how to make PowerPoint. It's expected you know how to write stuff. And we have no training on any of that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's actually kind of more challenging to do that in a national lab environment, because a lot of the people here are actually research faculty as opposed to teaching faculty.
Yeah.
So sometimes those classroom experiences are a little farther off. That's not to say that there's nothing, but sometimes it does feel like, oh, maybe I'm getting a little too far away from actual teaching. But there is still a lot of opportunity for outreach. And stuff like that. So,
if you don't mind my asking, what's your long-term goal? I mean, what happens after your postdoc here?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a hot take, but in some ways, being guided by a brand new professor kind of turned me off to being a professor myself. I saw how hard it was to go through the tenure process and to get through all of that. So I've considered like trying to stay more at the staff scientist level, where I'm helping with grants, but I'm not the only one responsible for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've also considered industry as a place that I could go. There's several companies that build the kind of equipment that I've designed, and so that would also be a good fit.
I mean, that's interesting. So you're talking R&D for new equipment, or installs?
So building gyrotrons, building probes, that kind of stuff.
I mean, there's a few companies on Earth that do that, but you know those people.
Yes.
You've purchased from them, you've worked with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had opportunities to like go and visit some of them, and so it's been a really good process.
That's fun. I mean, I can't hold it against you. Assistant professorship is hard.
It's tough.
It's emotionally trying. It's financially. It's imagine.
Yeah, and if you're not really good at like sitting down and like writing grants, which I personally do better when I'm moving at least part of my day and stuff like that, it's just really, really challenging.
Yeah, no, I can definitely feel that. Hamsterlicious has suggested throw them to the sharks. Is that
I don't know if he's talking about the academic teaching idea or the fact that I'm not healing my allies because I shoot strong blood.
It might be a gaming related. You never. stream.
Yeah, who knows?
Ninja Physics says communication is an art, and when you have interdisciplinary colleagues, since we use our own lingo, it was related to teaching. Okay, throw them to the sharks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have zero education in how to teach. We have zero experience. Well, we TA, but it's like sink or swim scenario, and we have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah, it could be really rough.
Yeah. But it's also fun and rewarding, and I'll pitch the other side of that spectrum. But professorship is an interesting journey. I'm happy I'm on the other side of tenure, because it is.
Oh my gosh.
It's it's hard. It's stressful.
That's pretty great.
All right. So one of the questions we'd like to ask as well is, what was your "I made it as a scientist" moment? Like when did you "I am a scientist" kind of thing?
Well, right now. I'm on Ask Scientist Gaming.
This is the threshold event.
Yeah, well, I actually knew about this stream beforehand
awesome.
before you asked, and I was really excited to be on it.
So you probably heard about Ryan's stream from, was that the first one? Bombach?
I'm not sure what exactly came up. I follow a speed gaming community.
Oh, nice.
For charity speed gaming.
Yeah.
Awesome games done quick. And I think I actually saw one of your speed games on the thing before I actually saw the Ask a Scientist
That's awesome.
main content.
Yeah.
So it actually worked out really well. And I was like, oh, this is an FSU.
Yeah.
Oh, I should be on this. This is cool.
That's awesome. I try to advertise. Our main mechanisms are Reddit and Twitch and Twitter, actually.
Yeah.
And we have a Discord server as well, so that's awesome. I'm always curious to learn how people find us.
Yeah.
Because it's weird, because Twitch is a very interesting demographic, because like the average age is 23, but it's also everything from video games to music to blacksmithing to jewelry work. So, no, that's awesome. I'm glad you're familiar with it. It also is nice I don't have to explain what Twitch is to you. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's a nice bonus. But I refuse to believe this is your "I made it as a scientist" moment. What was the big one?
So, I mean, there's been different times where, like, I'm sending stuff from my probe, like sending data from my probe to other scientists. That feels really good. But, I mean, it's a little bit of a bummer, but on a more serious note, like, a lot of times it's hard to believe that, like, you belong here. There's called imposter syndrome, this idea that, like, oh, I'm just kind of like fooling everyone on like a day that I can't focus or stuff like that. So, you know, I think it's just important for everyone to realize that, like, you know, even if you don't feel like you're a part of things, you're still contributing and you're still like doing the good stuff. So even when it's hard, even when it doesn't feel like you're doing things right, you're still valid.
Hamsterlicious. My imposter syndrome has an imposter syndrome. Now, it's a very real phenomenon.
For real.
We all feel it all the time. Like, when are they going to figure out that I'm a scam artist?
Yeah,
it's terrible, and it can be debilitating. It gets really bad sometimes.
Really can.
So, yeah. So I'm in charge of graduate recruiting in the chemistry department, and one of the things I try to emphasize is, like, if you got accepted, it's because we believe you can get a PhD. And so you've already done that. You just have to put in the work. And I know imposter syndrome, I try to emphasize, we know that's real, but you have the skills, I promise. Most of grad school is just hard work. It's not anything genetically predisposed to be successful. It's literally work, time, and effort.
Yeah, for real.
All right, so you beat the Hercules.
I did not, but I just ran up against a wall, so I'm going back to the easier world.
No worries. But you still enjoy the game.
Still like it.
That's a risk. One of my favorite Onion articles ever, the title was "Speedrunner Accidentally Enjoys Game."
Oh, yeah.
I'm
not really a speedrunner myself. I just, like, watch the games. If I was a speedrunner, I'd be much better at this game.
That's true. Well, one of the things I like about Ask a Scientist Gaming in particular is it's underappreciated how foundational scientific method is to video gaming.
Ooh.
And, like, the thing people don't appreciate is every time you pick up a video game and you start it from scratch, the rules in that universe are not the same as your rules. And so what you do is figure out those rules, which is literally just scientific method, right?
Yeah.
Like, trial and error, it's having a testable hypothesis. Does this beat the boss? Understanding the rules so you can win. And so think it's really underappreciated. I think kids should be like sold that idea much earlier.
Yeah. And they'll tell you some of it, but a lot of it you just have to figure out, can you jump up that high or stuff like that. So.
Well, it's one of those things. I think the stigma around video gaming has gone down significantly in the last decade or so.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. That's fun to have gamers on.
Fantastic.
So what is you're playing as which character?
His name is Sora.
You always play as the main character?
Yeah. Okay. So Donald and Goofy are kind of helping out in the background. But it's this original character called Sora is the main character.
That's fun. The key wielding character.
Yes, the Keyblade.
That's awesome.
Wielder.
All right. So in terms of research, like, what are you most excited about? Like, you measure things for other people, but is there something that stands out to you as like, I want this to work because?
So there's several things from my former PhD advisor that I still want to work. But there's so he's doing magic angle spinning spheres as opposed to rotors, which are really cool. And also electron decoupling. So we want the electrons and the nuclei to talk, but then when we're done with that polarization, it can actually cause broadening of the signal, so we want them to kind of shut up. So that's why we designed a gyrotron and a bunch of other stuff in order to make that more possible. But it's still a very challenging experiment.
So the casual listener is probably really weird to hear magic angle spinning as we invoke magic to...
It's one of my favorite terms. That's why I put it in the little title thing.
It's very ubiquitous across many things, actually.
Yes.
Magic angle is useful.
Magic angle is so cool. So what we use it for is...
well, let's start with what is a magic angle.
Okay,
why
a magic angle...
Mathematically, it makes sense.
Magic angle is 54.7 degrees. And for us, that's the rotation axis of your rotor versus the main magnetic field. And as a fun fact, that's also, if you go from one corner of a cube to another corner, that is the angle that is. And so imagine that cube spinning, and the x becomes y, the y becomes z, the z becomes x. So they're all kind of like becoming each other, averaging, right? So the reason that a lot of our signals are really broad is there's well, I'm not going to get into reasons the signals are broad, but they are, and we want them to be thinner so that we can tell the different signals apart. And magic angle spinning, or spinning around that magic angle, makes those thinner, and so we're able to tell them apart easier. And so that's why we call it magic for our idea.
It is not actual magic, ladies and gentlemen. It is mathematical magic that works out.
Yeah, it's mathematical
Vectors
magic.
Cancel and stuff is awesome.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Pretty amazing, and it's ubiquitous. We use it in energy transfer studies between molecules.
Oh,
so,
that's really cool.
It works out pretty nice.
Yeah.
Magic angle.
Fantastic.
I mean, so mildly related to that, what's your favorite equation?
Okay, so my favorite equation relates how the electrons that are gyrating inside the gyrotron, that's why I call it gyrotron, how they get a certain frequency of microwaves. So the electron's frequency is equal to the magnetic field, because we have a magnet outside the gyrotron. And we have also related in that is the mass of the electron. And you think that would be stable, right? Mm-hmm. But we are going so close to the speed of light when they're ejecting off that surface that the mass is actually changing. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually making a difference in the frequency that we're getting out. So I just think that's like such a cool concept and such a cool thing that it's able to do.
So that's a fun, like, 120 years ago, Einstein comes up with E equals mc squared. He would have not have predicted it's relevant in NMR type experiments. But yeah, mass is related to energy at the speed of light, and your mass can change depending on how fast you're going, which is crazy.
It's wild.
But we have very solid examples of this. We can watch this happen in lab, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, mass is not always mass. Sometimes it turns to energy. That's pretty cool. So that's your favorite equation just from your graduate experience? Or?
Yeah, that's really just from my graduate experiments. Yeah, I'm more battling with more equations right now that I'm not in a good relationship with. So we're going to talk about those.
Yeah. So deriving new relationships.
Yeah, and just trying to get things to, it's been a real challenge to try to get certain things to fit to a curve in MATLAB. And so it's been a big problem for me overall. But yeah, we're doing well. We're about to publish, so
that's awesome.
We'll see how it goes.
I mean, the idea of equations scares a lot of people, and it's kind of sad it that way. I teach general chemistry, so I have to deal with that all the time, and it's like equations. The way I like to tell people what it is if you think about a graph, you want to make straight lines in graphs because straight lines are very predictable, right? If you know one point on the line, you can predict another point on the line. Literally, the goal of the entirety of science is to draw straight lines with data. And like every equation that exists is trying to do that in different ways. It's trying to like extrapolate or interpolate information to try to predict something. And so if you can graph the stock market with a straight line, you have broken the stock market and you're filthy rich. That's all of us, right? Sociology, psychology, biology, chemistry, physics. We're trying to graph stuff with straight lines. Yeah. And it's, I hope some of my Gen Chem students, like, they see that, because there's some obvious versions of that, like, vapor pressure, gas volume type relationships that are linear, but some are more complex. You have natural logs and logarithms, but they're all doing the same thing, right? And so I hope you win your battle, and I hope you get to draw a straight line. Is the short answer there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's all worth it in the end. We're just trying to describe how things are, acting in real life, which they don't always act in
they don't
predictable
behave.
ways.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we keep trying to predict them.
And the best part about science, especially historic scientific progression, is everything's hard until it's not anymore. And then it's just easy. Like quantum mechanics is kind of standard cell phone calculations now. It wasn't 100 years ago. So yeah, it's
exactly. Something that one of my professors told me about quantum was like, we had classical Newtonian physics and it was working great until we got to this other level. And then we ran into things that were quantum, and that wasn't fitting what Newtonian physics could do. So we just predicted it differently. That's what quantum is. It's not scary. It's just different.
Yeah. You've gotten to a size or a speed or something where normal rules that we think of intuitively don't apply anymore.
Yeah.
I love that boundary between Newtonian and quantum.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorite equations is it's a capillary action equation. Ooh. And I teach this in general chemistry, and it's an empirical equation that relates intermolecular forces to how high a liquid will climb up a tube, right? Okay. But what's really cool about that equation is there's gravity in that equation. And so intrinsic to that equation is the relationship between quantum interactions and gravity, which physics has not yet solved.
Yeah.
Right? So you can do the quantum math all you want, but there's no gravity in the Schrodinger equation. And so that is somewhere embedded in that empirical relationship is a relationship that's physics have been looking for 100 years.
Yeah.
Which is it's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just, we're trying to make straight lines, and some of those straight lines need quantum mechanics and gravity, and we don't have that straight line yet, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Man, what else do I want to ask? I have my list of questions. You've watched the stream before. Do you have a favorite direction that your guests go?
I have a question that I really wanted to answer. Is that what you're trying to
Yes.
get at?
What do you want to answer?
So you usually ask like if there's a place that media gets things wrong.
Yes.
And I kind of have a kind of an example for you from this series.
All right, let's
So there's a I'm gonna pause here for a minute. So there's a character later in the series that is staring out at a sunset, and he tells his friend, "Bet you don't know why sunsets are red." You see, light is made out of lots of different colors, and out of those colors, red travels the farthest. And I have feelings about this, so I'd like
that's
to
from
hear
Kingdom
yours.
Hearts?
That's from later in the series,
Oh,
yes.
wow. Yes. The answer is no. light travels equal distance.
It
Well, it
does
depends what
all
medium
travel.
it's coming through and what's
Yeah,
absorbing it.
because I think he's trying to get at refraction,
Yeah.
but he's just not getting
Like,
quite
not the scatter
there.
part of that problem.
Right.
But, yeah.
For a long time, I thought he said that that red travels the fastest, which I had a big problem with.
Yeah,
but
but it's the furthest.
It's the furthest.
I guess it's right. Its depth of penetration is higher, so
Yes.
it goes the further distance. So
but it depends on like the time of day and
yeah,
like all
no,
that
that's
stuff.
fun. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah,
Certain media, that's awesome.
yeah.
I like
What are
it.
we doing?
Hamsterlicious, rather than a favorite equation, it's a least adversarial equation. Maybe I should ask that. What's your least adversarial equation?
What are you not mad at right
Which
now?
one don't you hate very much?
Yeah.
All right, Hamsterlicious
true.
has redeemed Request a Factoid. So they spent
Oh.
their standard internet units on you dropping a knowledge bomb on them.
Oh, a knowledge bomb. Uh-oh. Okay. So, a knowledge bomb.
So we were in a rush to set up this stream. Usually I give my guests a heads up about factoids and like we do predictions, but not today. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
we're
Faith.
just going for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just use this as a free pass to like talk about something that's really cool to me?
Yeah, no, this is like if you're gonna just surprise someone with something new.
Yeah, so we use gyrotrons, and I forgot to mention that that part that the electrons are coming off of at the bottom is called an electron gun, and it's actually shooting electrons into a vacuum space. So it's really a cool cool device that I got to work with. That's my factoid is
it's-
electron gun.
So are you old enough to remember the CRT TVs?
Yes.
The big bulb on the back?
Yes.
I mean, it's an electron gun.
It is an electron
shooting
gun,
at your
yes.
face.
Yeah. Yes.
So back when they said don't sit too close to the TV, it's because of those electron guns shooting at the phosphors on the front of the screen.
Fantastic.
So yeah, electron guns are pretty awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
Electron guns, I
Yeah.
like it, and it's usually like a cathode ray of some kind, and you just heat
Yeah,
a
this
filament.
one is like a ring of no, not molybdenum. I can't remember exactly the material that it is, but you basically get it super hot so that its likelihood to just shoot electrons off of its surface is less because it's a higher energy state, right? That's something that we talk about a lot. So yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. What's also cool about those is how you steer electron beams. So after you shoot the electrons out, you can move them with magnetic fields. Which
Yes,
is really,
that's exactly
really cool.
why it's in the middle of a magnetic field.
Yeah, and that's why if you have an old CRT TV and you guys put a magnet up to it, you'll see the image distort because you're deflecting electrons. So
Yeah.
they're hitting the wrong spot on the screen, and that's where the color variation comes
Yeah.
from,
Very cool.
which is really fun. I may have destroyed at least one CRT TV that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Reminds me of the charge to mass ratio experiment. Exactly right. Mass spec and
Yes, yes.
figuring out the mass of an electron through the same techniques.
Yes.
Yes.
Very similar.
It all ties together, which is,
Yeah.
is pretty
It's
fun.
very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know enough about this game to see if it's going well or not.
Oh, it's just going.
Yeah, it's just
yeah,
progression
just
through
going
goals.
around. I have to find evidence to get Alice out of a cage because she's been wrongfully imprisoned. So we need to find evidence like this to exonerate her.
The lore. Should I play this game? I've never done this series.
Oh, it's a fun time. Oh, shoot, that was not the right person. I was supposed to do it.
So my daughters are 3 and 6. They're almost old enough to start really appreciating gaming.
Oh, yeah, it's a fun one. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. It gets really strange with the lore and time travel and stuff with that later, but the first game is pretty simple and nice in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
All right, so one I like to ask, since I'm not an expert in your domain, there have been several Nobel Prizes related to NMR, whether it's the initial discovery or the solving of particular structures. If there's another NMR Nobel Prize in the near future, what do you think it would be for?
For what I'm for like my fields?
Yeah, something related, if they were going to give one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, DNP, that's been around for a while.
Yeah. DNP has been around for a while. I think bringing DNP to room temperature would be really cool. And obviously Thierry's doing like room temperature in, I'm talking about room temperature in a biological solvent, like water or glycerol or something like that. I think that could make a big difference because there's so much equipment that you have to have in order to go cold. And you need a lot of microwaves. So being able to reduce the amount of microwaves to a lower power source that is less expensive and being able to get rid of some of that other equipment might help to make it more ubiquitous and could make NMR a lot faster.
Yeah. One thing that's underappreciated about the Nobel Prize is if you look at his original will, it was for advancements in science for the betterment of mankind. So science isn't alone, it has to do good for society. And so a lot of measurement innovations do that. And that's why MRI got it and things like that, because it is for the betterment of mankind.
It's huge.
All right, a question from the MagLab audience. If any kind of magic-like thing from this game was actually able to happen in real life, what do you think it would be? How do you think it would work?
Magic-like thing from this game was real.
Yeah, what would it be? If you could suspend certain rules of physics and enable one of these magical things?
Just anything that I want.
Yeah.
So one of the rules of time travel in this game is you can go back to any point where your body was in the past, and I think that would be really useful.
That would be useful.
So I don't know. I guess that.
Well, one thing I've wrestled with the idea of time travel, we can dive into physics, right? Frame of reference. So if I go back in time and I'm right where I am right now, sitting positionally on a global XY coordinate, the Earth has moved 100 million miles, right? like I'm floating in space.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that? So going back to your own body, then you could
like
not go everywhere, but you could go interesting places.
I spent a lot of, because there was a factoid at some point I read where it was like the T-Rex when it was alive was 100,000 light years away or something like that, right?
Yeah.
As the expansion of space, we're in a different place every second, right? So get just brain droppings, basically, random thoughts. Which is why I love this stream, actually. I have a lot of diverse guests on, because I get to hear about very interesting areas of expertise.
Yeah.
Time travel. I think we discussed that a little earlier. Time travel is possible, but only in the forward direction. We're time traveling as we speak.
At a certain speed.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fixed speed. Unless you're going fast enough, it's all relative.
Yeah.
I like it. I gotta get my pen back from my wife.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my wife and kids are over there listening.
Hello.
It's kind of funny. Oh, man, unless time is a foliated manifold.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole. Some astrophysicists on.
Uh-oh.
Man, so you teeter on the boundary between chemistry and physics.
Yes.
Presumably your coworkers are I think Thierry, he's a physicist. Is that right?
Yes.
His background's physics, and you work with him.
And my boss, Fred Menting-Fichier, he's a chemist by training, he always says. But he does molecular modeling, not only of like how the molecule looks, but what its properties are going to be like when it's in the system. So the properties that it's going to have when it's contributing to DNP specifically. So that's his area of research. So he uses MagLab and a lot of other calculation programs for that, but he's written his own code that essentially like goes from start to finish and tells you what the properties are going to be.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fit a straight line.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all simulations are. An advanced straight line.
Yeah.
I like it. So have you started to serve as a peer reviewer for proposals and papers?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm mostly on the making end of that, I guess.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time before they start dropping on your lap.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're in an interesting career transition.
Yeah. But yeah, it's getting pretty close to there. But right now I'm looking at making more grants. So I just renewed my postdoc based on a grant that I was able to get.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's a weird story actually. I was originally paid through University of Florida because they have a shared grant with FSU, and I was able to be paid on that side of it, and that's where I started to build the probes and build the different items. And now I'm on a different grant to keep building, but also use them as you go along. So it's a little different side of it, and I'm being paid by FSU now, but it's just one of those like very like esoteric things. But
well, it's weird to be on the other side of academia because it's like you see how the sausage is made and it is a mess, right? Like it's we're all just begging for money to pursue research.
Yeah, saying why is my research so much more important than the research that all these other good scientists are doing? Could be really hard, especially when you don't have a lot of when you don't have a lot of confidence personally, and then you're just like, everything I do is amazing. End of story.
But it goes back to the imposter syndrome too, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you got to sell yourself, and it's hard because one of the things I wrestle with is I do this research and I'm really passionate about it, but the reality of this likely impacting someone's life. I mean, I work in solar cells, but I'm never going to make a world record solar cell that's commercially available.
Right. Yeah, but it's contributing to the whole, right?
Yeah. You hope it contributes to the whole, or you make a paper that's not cited by anyone, or it's the paper that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd like the general public to know that a lot of scientific research and funding is kind of rolling the dice. Like, if we do enough darts at a dartboard, somebody's going to hit a bullseye. And it's not completely random. It is directed, but you never know where the next breakthrough is. And it's hard.
Yeah.
And especially on the reviewer end, because you're like, oh, should I fund this or this? And the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, and they get so many. Like, I was in a grants workshop the other day, and they're like, oh yeah, so if you're doing this one kind of graduate student level, then you have like a 1 in 5 chance of being funded, and that's the best chance that you're going to have on a grant.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy.
I mean, NSF is 10%. Like NIH is maybe a little higher than that. No, that's I mean, that's one of the hardest parts about this job is you work really, really hard on a proposal and you say, I have this really great idea.
Yeah.
And then it gets shot down for reasons that are sometimes dumb, sometimes they're good.
Yeah. Really rough. But
honestly, creating policy is kind of like rolling the dice too. We can't predict all outcomes. Yeah, no, that's true. Like, talking to Laura about that, she's actually involved in policy development. And
yeah, it was really cool listening to her portion of it.
Yeah. That was fun. I'm glad she was willing to give this a try.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Apparently Ryan Bombach talked her into it.
Yeah,
So,
that's fantastic.
kind of fun. All right, so in the journey of scientific research, we always make mistakes. We have accidents. What's the most damage you've seen in lab, or the biggest accident, or the most expensive accident you've been a part of or observed?
Okay,
This is usually a personal anecdote, which is why I love it.
Shout out to Xander.
And sweet startup dollars.
Oh, sweet startup dollars, yes. So this is kind of a thing where I ended up, I wasn't sure if something had been ordered, and it was like this really expensive part of the Gyrotron. And also Xander wasn't sure if it had been ordered, and we weren't keeping good documentation at that point yet. And so we went ahead and ordered again. Turns out that it was already ordered, so we had two of them. And then when we found that out, we just spent like the next week just like organizing the entire lab and like putting everything in clear containers because you don't want that kind of thing to happen ever again.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one's on Xander. He's
well, I mean, it was something that I was also responsible for, but it felt really really bad.
I mean, that's one of the things about being a professor they don't train you about is management. Because it's not just science, it's not just teaching. You run a $1 million a year business, basically.
Yeah.
And you're doing it yourself with no training.
Yeah, and that was something else that I got to see a lot when I was in his lab, was just like how he grew as a manager and like how he interacted with people was really interesting for me to see.
It's delicious. At least nothing exploded. Do you have any explosion stories?
I have a small explosion story. No one got hurt.
Yeah.
So I was testing these vacuum jacketed tubes, which we were eventually going to send very cold gases through. So liquid nitrogen about temperatures. And the way that we would fill our magnets was with these rubber tubes. That once they get to cold temperatures, they're rubber, but they're a pretty thick wall, and so they don't really expand when everything is cold. When you're putting, so I thought that when I would just, excuse me, so when I started this experiment, I was like, okay, I just need to see if everything's going to contract in a weird way, or if it's going to when it gets cold, is it going to break all apart? So liquid nitrogen was available in the lab, and the rubber hose connection fit very nicely onto the top of the vacuum jacketed tube that I was making. So of course, the obvious solution is to just take liquid nitrogen, put it into there.
Yep.
But when liquid nitrogen hit that surface, it expanded, and the bottom of it kind of blew up like a balloon. And it was a problem.
Behind a blast shield, or did you get hit with shrapnel?
It was right there, but it was just little pieces of rubber, so I was okay.
It's not bad. They're going fast.
But I did have glasses on. I did have safety glasses on.
And delicious. Cool. That's
Too
the right
cool.
answer.
Yeah.
That's only a minor explosion. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Man, I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, on the spectrum of things that can go bad.
It just wasn't very well thought through.
Yeah. Man, so the extra item you purchased, did you guys end up using it eventually? Or
We
you just
did end
ate
up
the
using
cost?
it for,
Okay.
so we ended up making multiple gyrotrons, and I actually was more involved with the making of the second gyrotron. So that was actually good for us in the long run. But yeah, at the time it just hurt.
Yeah. No, that's a non-trivial.
Yeah.
Like when I was first starting, I would tell my students, like, this instrument is 1 year of your salary kind of thing. Like, 'cause
exactly.
you have to do that.
Like That
cost
definitely
benefit.
cost a lot more than my car at the time.
Yeah.
That piece that I lost. So it's just like, oh no.
Well, it's one of those things that, like, the general public, again, if you think about National Science Foundation and IH, like, research is expensive.
Yeah.
It has to be, because you have to measure things accurately and quickly. And I mean, if your tax dollars are going to go anywhere, like, I promise that is a useful endeavor.
Yes, and these, these machine shops that make them, they're like, when you make 1 million of something, it can be pretty cheap, but when they're only making one, they're putting all their expertise and all this setup time into making this one specific piece. So prototyping could be a lot more expensive than getting 1 million of something. But obviously you only need 1 or 2.
Yeah. Well, and in my domain of expertise, if you want to get a pulse of light that's 10 femtoseconds, like, it is really expensive to move that fast. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
Hamsterlicious, I was absolutely blown away to find out the spectroscopy machine that we used in biophysics department was $80,000. Yeah, that's not... I mean, our femtosecond laser is roughly $300,000. And so I'd essentially... not write a personal check, but spend more than I did on my house.
Yeah.
And it's accuracy is hard, measurements are hard, and they're expensive. I've lost track. I should give you some sound if you want.
It's all good. It's just the sound of everyone being at really low health or to use any items.
Oh, that's the warning for low health?
Yeah, that's the warning for,
So
you're about to die.
Everyone watching the stream is hearing it screaming at you.
Sorry.
Awesome. Ninja Physics has redeemed Request a Factoid. You have another knowledge bomb.
Another knowledge bomb. So... funny how a lot of these are just going to be from my grad school experience, because I feel like I got deeper into things. So when we were working with this HIV drug, we were looking at a drug that worked with a certain enzyme and would instead of, so most drugs for HIV work to keep the HIV from replicating, and so you're keeping the cells from expressing that, because then they'll express the virus along with that. One of the so the drug that we were looking at was supposed to protect it from coming into the cells. So the idea was to protect, or I'm sorry, the drug that we were looking at actually turned on that mechanism. So there's other drugs that protect the other cells from invasion by HIV, and this one would turn it on in all the cells that it was in. And once you've turned it on in all the cells and your own immune system has gone and gobbled that up, the idea would be that you have no more HIV in your system, and you don't have to keep taking these maintenance drugs forever. So obviously this is not to clinical trial or anything yet. We were just in the molecular biology section of trying to figure this out. But I thought it was just kind of a really cool mechanism, because usually you don't want the disease process to happen, but in our case we were trying to turn it on in a very specific way in like a controlled environment in order to make the person's life more livable without having to take that maintenance medication and have that HIV. That was essentially the idea would be to go from HIV positive back to HIV negative cured, which is currently not something that we're looking at.
I mean, drug mechanism is an intriguing thing to me. I'm a chemist, like I don't work in this domain, but I remember a distinct moment when I was a grad student where I had a colleague in biology, and she was talking about developing and studying a drug, and I'm like, what kind of drug is it? And when I was asking that, I was like, what is the molecule, right? Is it like a hydrocarbon? Is it a steroid? Is it
What's
like,
in it?
I'm like, what's the structure? And she started explaining her answer, and it was all about the mechanism, right? Does it inhibit something? Is it competitive? Is it because like it's how you think about the problem is different. And so like biology, they don't care what the molecule is as long as it does the process they want. And so it's very, I love that idea. There are many different ways to attack a problem. All right, so anyone just joining us, Ask a Scientist Gaming, Mediocre Gameplay, Expert Science, we are streaming live from the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory Open House. In fact, we have a whole bunch of people wandering by us. It's surprisingly loud here. Hopefully you guys can't hear too much of that background noise, but it's been fun. We're streaming live. A guest today is Dr. Faith Scott. She's an expert in NMR spectroscopy and dynamic nuclear polarization and likes to talk about things like magic angle spinning. So if you guys have any questions, throw them in chat. Hi, brother. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions, we want to see them. Flower Child, first time chat, thank you for joining us. If you have questions, just general questions about science or specifics about magnetic related things, we are happy to answer them. We have debunked at least twice now that the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory does not control the weather. So.
Yes. Good. Yeah, that is an important one.
You've seen the Reddit threads that regularly.
I've had people ask me that at the grocery store. So that's why we didn't get that hurricane, right?
Yeah.
No, there's only a few places the magnetic fields go outside the building, and they're marked so that the lawnmowers don't go in that area and get sucked closer to the wall.
Oh, that's interesting. There's a perimeter on the outside.
Yeah, that's a perimeter. There's only a few places where that happens because we've had to shove the magnets further closer to the walls so that they don't interact with each other.
Like, is there a visual indicator of that, or is it?
Yeah, there's a fence up on the outside so that people.
So that was probably like an OSHA regulation you had to at a certain field.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
And also, it'll the thing about physics is when you're pulling on a magnet, the magnet. When a magnet is pulling on you, you're also pulling on that magnet. Mm-hmm. So these coils are actually hanging in the center of this area. So when you actually take something too close to it, the coil will shift towards that, and it can cause big problems for our experiments or quench the magnet. So quenching the magnet is when the magnetic field or something is going wrong and things get too hot in there. There's liquid nitrogen and liquid helium that are cooling it all off. Quenching is when something gets too hot, it starts to boil off the liquid helium, and it all becomes a big problem all at once.
Just venting. You gotta exit the room because you can't breathe.
Yeah, there's oxygen indicators all over here so that you can tell when there's not enough oxygen, because you can't detect it by yourself.
Hamsterlicious asks, concerning the strongest magnetic fields you are able to generate, will direct exposure to biological tissues cause damage?
No. So the fields that we work with, no, they will not. In fact, we have some of the highest magnetic fields here, and we're totally fine putting the samples in that area. Yeah, there's not really damage. The thing that I would be worried about with damage is more the microwaves. If you put your hand in front of the microwave beam, it gets hot.
It gets really hot.
It does get hot.
And it penetrates into tissue. So.
Yeah, so we have shields all around the microwave beam.
No, Hamsterlicious, fun factoid, since we're sitting in the MagLab. Faith, I don't know if you know this, but you remember 10, 15 years ago, there was like a video clip of suspending a frog in a magnetic field?
Yes.
That was done here. And it was done here without IRB approval. Oh. So people were pretty unhappy because it was an experiment on a living thing without the health regulation associated with it. So yeah, check out the video. Look up suspending a frog in a magnetic field, and it's just floating there in space.
Yeah.
It's basically if you create a field strong enough, you induce a magnetic moment in a object of any kind, as long as the field's large enough. So that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
At least, and someone can correct me, but yeah, OSHA emote is correct use in this case.
OSHA emote?
Yeah,
that's fantastic. You have one.
Yeah, we have a couple emotes. I don't use emotes enough. I really should. Dee Dee Sagan, OSHA, Good game. Minucci rage. We had somebody rage quit the stream at one point. Yeah, Madden 2007 is hard. All right. Thank you, Ninja Physics. I was debating whether I was going to make my guest play Narc. I don't know if you've stuck around for the other streams long enough.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was one of those.
What's the ESRB rating on that?
So it's Nintendo, right? So they got rid of all the blood and everything associated with it. It's one of the lighter shooter games of modern times. So
yeah,
and they got rid of the references to drugs in the NES version. So
which is funny because it's called Narc.
Yeah, and there's indications of drugs, but yeah, we don't talk about that.
Yeah, it's really wild.
Yeah, man. That's my favorite part.
I would play it if you want, but
we'll have you on the stream for the 3-hour one after several drinks of alcohol,
fantastic.
and then we'll
no,
play
I would
some
love
Narc at the
that.
end.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
So it's like, should I make Laura play Narc?
It's like, okay, we're just getting into video games, and now you're doing this to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's infinite rockets, infinite bullets, like infinite lives. Like you're not gonna die. It's just you might be
just a little bit rough.
Bad at walking right.
Yeah.
But that is one of my favorite accidental discoveries on the stream, making our guests play Narc. All right, so aside from the magnetic fields, the MagLab, Terry talked about microwaves being damaging, so you have to go out of the room when you microwave a burrito or whatnot. Is there any other like anti-vax, flat earth, like superstition related to your expertise, either microwaves or magnetic fields?
So it doesn't come up a lot, but some people avoid saying nuclear magnetic resonance because there's a connotation of nuclear being bad, being radioactive. And really we're working with stable nuclei, so it's not as much of a issue as it is with a nuclear bomb or something, for example. That's a very different. They're talking about unstable nuclear isotopes. We're working on stable ones.
Yeah. I mean, so the scientific nuclear is just like, is a nuclei involved, as in the center of an atom, whereas the public perception, and in their defense, that was, I mean, Cold War, height of nuclear proliferation.
Oh, yeah, that's the biggest place that it's talked about.
Well, that in like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
So I empathize, but
I get
you're right.
But that's just not what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Nuclear is scary. The doctors want to nuke me. Yes, that's the MRI essentially.
Yeah,
looking at nuclei.
Yeah, but the MRI isn't so bad for you. You might have some metabolism problems with the contrast agents, but the doctor is going to figure that out for you.
Yeah. I mean, even nuclear power and everything, it got so stigmatized because of those mistakes, but it's a green way to do it.
Yeah, it's really clean energy. So
it's kind of tragic we haven't leaned into that more. But we'll see what happens with the fusion experiments. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
That could just solve problems.
Yeah.
It's underappreciated, but in the sciences, a lot of our limitation is just fundamentally like energy available to do stuff. Like we talked about the cost of running the MagLab. A lot of it's electricity related.
Oh my gosh, especially here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like it can be a significant percentage of Tallahassee's electricity when we're running all the resistive magnets. We don't run all the resistive magnets at once because there's too much energy being taken out of the grid at once.
Yeah, you can see the power go down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually.
But that's how you control hurricanes, right? You turn them all on at once. Then, just kidding, people. That doesn't have any influence on the weather.
Yeah.
Magnetic fields fall off exponentially. You have to be pretty close to them for them to do a lot of damage.
And a lot of them are shielded, which means that you're actually fine just like operating even a few feet outside. It just depends on the magnet. A lot of them. They have different ways to shield the outside of them so that,
I mean, so the shielding idea is interesting. It's like if you have just a magnet, it'll have a certain field, and then you add a built-in shield on this.
It's like a counter field. So sometimes it's like an active counter field. Sometimes it's like copper wire to kind of dampen the effects.
So are you creating a field to disrupt the other field?
Sometimes.
Or is it just getting stuff
it depends on the it
That's intense.
The magnet physics itself is not as much like what I do, it's just what I use. So that's a little bit out of my expertise.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, it's kind of fun because there's when I was a younger scientist, sometimes I would have bobby pins like in my hair, and I would forget about them until I was like underneath the magnet, and it was like a little tug on my hair, like, oh,
felt it.
Yeah,
Well, and it heat up too, right? Did you ever?
If you go too fast.
Okay.
If you're going pretty slowly through a magnetic field, you're not going to have that problem.
Man, that's intense. Did
Oh.
you ever wipe a credit card?
No, but I've heard that people at NMR conferences, the magnetization of hotel cards is weaker, and so people have gone on tour in an NMR facility and then gotten back to the hotel and all their hotel cards are wiped.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you, at some of these conferences, you have demo booths too, or like tabletop NMRs and stuff,
yeah.
and they're just wiping their hotel cards. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hamsterlicious. Electrodynamics and materials is so amazingly complicated. I still have nightmares of my electrodynamics 2 homeworks.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I've never had to take an electrodynamics class.
Yeah.
So you were PChem primarily? That was your program in grad school?
Yeah, it was PChem.
So what classes did you have to take?
So yeah, we had quantum chemistry, which is kind of like quantum mechanics, but for chemists. Also took a lot of MagRes related courses. I actually started grad school as an inorganic chemist because my my undergrad did not have an inorganic chemistry sector, so I thought that was just the opposite of organic. And I was like, you know what, I'm not really into organic, so let's go inorganic.
Yeah, the antithesis.
And yeah, as soon as I took that inorganic class, I knew that was not for me.
Yeah.
So
was it group theory? That's what...
group theory and all that stuff. I took that first semester. First semester was the hardest semester, honestly. Even though there was like harder classes in the later years, there was more support between the students, and also there was less people in the classes, and so it was just much easier to get support with that.
Well, and the transition to grad school is hard. You go from high school to undergrad, and typically you have a cohort of students that you're coming in with, and you have dorms, and you have shared, clubs and stuff like that. And then the next step after you graduate is grad school.
Yeah.
You still have your incoming cohort, but it's a much lonelier experience.
Yeah, and that's like one of the places that the imposter syndrome was the most real. Even to the point of like one of my colleagues, like the first week, I don't know, I got talked about something and it was like, oh yeah, doing this with ADHD is hard. And she's like, oh, you have ADHD? Well, how did you get here? I was like...
Sorry to laugh at that.
It's true. Like, people associate ADHD with, like, a certain level of intelligence, and it's just like, no, it's just a different way your brain is working. Mm-hmm. So, even from that point forward, it's just kind of like, oh, well, I guess I shouldn't be here for some reason, but then it took me a long time to train myself out of that.
Yeah.
Also, I think because I was coming from a smaller school, the Missouri Baptist University, where we didn't have a school class that was more than 20 students, and then going to like a 100 student class or something that was like.
No, that's really intense.
Really tough, and honestly, I feel like if I had started in a larger school, I might not be where I am today. So I kind of had to accept that and be like, yeah, I did have that support as a younger student, and I did need that, and that was fantastic. So I don't know. Science works differently for everyone, but that doesn't mean you can't do it if you can't hold like a giant class.
Well, one of the things that you'll learn, like you probably had this experience in retrospect too, is the people that were the loudest and most confident going into grad school were not the best and the brightest. They were just the loudest, right? They were the most vocal. the Dunning-Kruger kind of.
Yeah, it does not always correlate.
Yeah. It's the quiet and reserved and think before you act that usually end up doing pretty well. But
yeah, but
varies.
once I, got to a point where I was like asking for help and like, it was also, the first semester, everyone was like, oh, well, we're in a study group together, but I already know how all these equations work. I'm like, well, I don't. So, getting to that point where like everyone was able to open up and kind of get out of their own imposter bubble to help each other was a big step too.
Hamsterlicious. I personally believe my ADHD is my academic superpower. Can be a power and a curse, right?
Yeah. Well controlled. It can be a real tool.
Yeah. Like I've very little doubt in my brain that I'm on the like autism spectrum, and it's like that's good and bad for things, right? It's useful in some respects, but debilitating in others.
Yeah.
I mean, ADHD, I imagine it's very much the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, we got 1 minute left formally on the stream. I'll close with the your story in going to chemistry in grad school. If you had to start over again in any of the sciences, what would you do? What would?
Okay, hands down, engineering.
Engineering is
so what I ended up doing. Oh, MagLab open house is
it's 15 minutes morning.
15-minute warning.
You want to hear the announcement, everyone? All right, that's our last call, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So engineering is your answer. You fell in love with building stuff.
I probably wouldn't have found the exact lab that I ended up in, but just being in a place where the career that has worked for me so far is being able to think about cool things, but also being able to work with my hands is a huge part of it, and being able to like build things and have an end use at the end of the day is just such a cool feeling. So it's I probably would have gone to engineering if I had done it all differently, but I ended up getting engineering skills in a physical chemistry.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're applied engineering to a specific set of problems.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. It's
all right.
fun.
Well, that brings us to the 2:45 mark. Faith, it's been a pleasure. Awesome. Thank you for joining me. It was short-term notice. We were searching for guests at the MagLab, and Faith kindly jumped to the opportunity. So I really appreciate it. And she brought her own console to game with, which is, again, very much appreciated. Faith, do you have any parting words for the audience?
Science is for everyone, and have a great day.
Awesome. Yeah, it's usually I close the stream at 11 o'clock and I go to sleep afterwards. Now I have the rest of my evening to go to. But thank you all for joining us. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for coming and asking questions and comments. It really brings us down tracks. We really enjoy like exploring space with our followers and viewers. So thank you very much on that. Our next stream won't be until March 15th. Guest to be determined. Unfortunately, my guest had to back out, so I'm going to find somebody else to do it. But March 15th, we'll get back on our Wednesday night track for every other Wednesday night. So, it's been a pleasure. And until next time.